Ladies and gentlemen, we do have a very interesting rumor that has upset a lot of NFL fans out there. We've got Roger Goodell coming out and saying that a Super Bowl in London, not only is it a possibility, but it's been discussed, and this could happen as early as 2030, following the NFL's third and final game in the UK this season. The league continues to explore its options internationally. Of course, the Jaguars played two of those three games, and they've got their own stadium situation. They're trying to fund around a $2 billion stadium of the future, half of the money possibly coming from the taxpayer. I don't think there's going to be a London-based team because it is a logistics nightmare. It would have to be its own subdivision. There was even a rumor of a potential division out in the UK and Germany. But overall, guys, when it comes to this rumor, it says on Sunday the NFL played its third and final game in London. But it's also important to note they're playing two more games in Germany. So that is not the end of the 9:30 a.m. games this season. They've got two more. They've also got a game in Mexico. And you can see the Ravens and the Titans around 61K at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. And that also is another question. Where would the Super Bowl take place if it was happening in London? Would it be at Wembley, which you would think it would be because I believe Wembley has a much bigger capacity, but Tottenham Hotspur is a much newer stadium, although Wembley just got a renovation about 10 years ago. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell was recently in London promoting the league's international games, and he wouldn't rule out taking America's biggest sporting event across the pond. Quote, "It's not impossible, and it is something that's been discussed before." So this seems like Goodell is prepping the American audience for a potential London-based Super Bowl, which a lot of fans would not like. A lot of these teams, a lot of these owners, they build stadiums, they build these big domes with the idea of hosting a Super Bowl, bringing it to their city. If they took it to London for 1 year, I'm sure Goodell would sell it as it's going to make us more money, we're going to be international. It might be the start of triggering a franchise out in London, although again, that's a logistics nightmare. Either way, I'm guessing the NFL is going to try and sell this like, oh, we're only going to get more popular and gain more money from it, and it's only going to be a one-time thing if we do it. Now, I'm not saying this is going to happen for sure, but about 6 or 7 months ago, I did do a video predicting where I thought the next 10 Super Bowls would be played at, and I believe it was 2033 I had them going to London. Now, that was just me throwing something out randomly. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't, but it does seem like there is sort of a prep going on. You can see Goodell also says, however, he admitted that the NFL remains focused on playing Super Bowls in cities that currently have franchises. Not that we do not have great fans here in London, we do, he explained. So as the international series develops, maybe it becomes a possibility that they play more games there. I believe they used to play 4 games in London, and the Germany thing has just kind of happened. The first games that happened in Germany for the NFL started last year, and now they're doing 3 games in London, 2 games in Germany, and 1 game in Mexico. Is he possibly prepping it to where it just depends how big of a cash cow is this? If it's big enough, would they have like 10 or 11 games? Like, is the new NFL schedule always having a 9:30 a.m. game, maybe outside of week 1 and week 18 because of the travel issues? You don't want teams, going there week 1. Same thing with week 18 going into the playoffs. That would be a massive disadvantage for a potential playoff team to have to play in London and deal with that travel. But could this be an idea where every week there's a game in London and they bring the Super Bowl to London? The other question is, when would the Super Bowl be played? Well, the thought is that it would be played at 3:30 Eastern Standard Time. We know London is way ahead of the East Coast and even further ahead of the West Coast in terms of American time zones. So I think that's a big issue. You're talking about the Super Bowl kicking off. Let's say the 49ers are in the Super Bowl. It kicks off at 12:30. So you're having your Super Bowl parties at noon. Maybe we're being spoiled here, but that just seems a little ridiculous. 3:30 for the East Coast. I mean, I guess it's palatable, but still, Normally we're all used to the Super Bowl happening at 6:30 East Coast, 3:30 Pacific time. That's a lot more digestible than what it would be in London. And then London time, it would be pretty late if you're talking about 3:30 on the East, possibly either 8:30 or 9:30, depending on the time zones. I think the time zones might actually change because we set our clocks back here in the first week of November. So maybe it goes from 6 hours behind to 5 hours behind. So maybe the Super Bowl would be happening at 8:30. I mean, that would be kind of an issue for the players there in London as well. And it would be just a total neutral site thing. When you talk about Super Bowls, you really want to eliminate the idea of travel having an impact on the teams, of just the overall vibe of it when you're leaving the United States. It is kind of a big deal. And those London games, it's not that they're not real and they don't matter, but there definitely is a different feel. Like, take the, Baltimore Titans game. It's just a different feel. The game that we just saw, we'll have to see what ends up happening. You guys can see the future Super Bowl locations. And I actually forgot about this. I thought this year they were playing at the Superdome, but it's not true. This year they're in Vegas, so they're playing at Allegiant Stadium for the first time. Not surprising at all, considering it is a super stadium. It's Las Vegas. And then next year, they go to the Superdome. And that is, I don't want to say it's the last time they're going to be going to the Superdome, but the Superdome is getting older. Although the Superdome is getting renovations, I'll give it credit. Maybe the Superdome gets one more Super Bowl after this, but, the Superdome's pretty old. And then in the 2025 season, so this would be early 2026, it would be at Levi Stadium. And then you're talking about some of the other options. Well, we do have a new dome stadium that's going up in the NFL that's going to open in 2028 in Nashville, Tennessee. And one of the main reasons you go with a dome stadium, not only are you trying to host events throughout the year, not only are you trying to keep a controlled environment, but this is Nashville, Tennessee, where this dome stadium is being built. So the weather really isn't that crazy of a concern. The reason is because they want to host a Super Bowl. And I'm sure they will host a Super Bowl in that new Titans stadium when it goes up in 2028. So that's probably another place where they're going to be going. But yeah, this is pretty big news for the NFL, especially for Goodell, to come out and say that he's possibly prepping the fans for a Super Bowl that could be taking place in London. This all comes down to money. If it can make them substantially more money through advertisers, through maybe different commercials for the UK audience, you're bringing in an entire new continent to the Super Bowl to get more fans. It's like the NFL is literally trying to glitch the system and make it like a global sport, at least in the West, and they see a big opportunity here and they're trying to take advantage of it. So when it comes to this, I wouldn't be worried about it. This is something that would be, again, probably the earliest they could do this is like 2030. But we just keep hearing stuff about London, about Germany, about doing more things over there. It's clearly a cash cow for them. How far would they actually go into? Could you imagine if they actually had London host a Super Bowl and it rained? Because those stadiums are not retractable roofs. I mean, I guess that they've hosted Super Bowls in the United States. They hosted a Super Bowl in New York or East Rutherford. I shouldn't say New York. East Rutherford, New Jersey at MetLife back in like 2013. And they got lucky that it didn't snow or rain in that one. It was like 54 degrees. But imagine they go across the pond and it rains and the game is just a complete mud fest. That would be the worst case scenario for the NFL. But either way, this is a tough look for the league. At least I'm sure the fans are not happy about this because it does feel like they're catering more towards, the European audience at this point. They're trying to bring in a brand new fan base, and they realize they can maximize their potential by doing that when you've got all these teams within the United States that still have not hosted a Super Bowl that I'm sure would love to host a Super Bowl. But either way, guys, that is the update. It seems like Goodell is prepping the audience possibly to host a Super Bowl in London. Why else would you come out and say that? Maybe it doesn't happen. Maybe it does. This is just speculation. And then the other idea is, where does this leave the Jacksonville Jaguars? Because the Jaguars situation, it's not a healthy one. And the reason I say that is because the Jaguars played back-to-back games in London. That's just not right. I'm sorry. You're the Jacksonville Jaguars. You're not the London Jaguars. How can you play back-to-back, games during the regular season, not even in your own country? That just doesn't add up to me. So maybe the Jaguars do get this funding. Maybe it goes through. Maybe the public votes to fund it. They're going to be possibly be paying $1 billion. The Jaguars themselves would be paying another $1 billion, and the entire renovation of their stadium would cost $2 billion. I do think that's most likely what's going to happen. Maybe the owner puts in more. Maybe they change the tax structure on how it's actually going to be paid. But it just seems like a situation where if you have one team in London, that team would be at such a disadvantage in terms of travel and especially getting free agents and people that actually want to play for a London-based team that it just wouldn't do very well. You would have to put 4 teams over there, which would be a massive expansion, or you would have to relocate Jacksonville to London along with another team and then have 2 expansion teams be located there as well. You would have to relocate 2 different teams. One of them would be the Jaguars. The other one, I don't know. I would throw out maybe a team like Carolina, but nothing against Carolina. I'm just saying based on their stadium situation, it's not the best right now. Charlotte is a fine city. I don't think the NFL wants to relocate the Panthers, but that would just kind of like be an idea in terms of that. But either way, guys, we will see if this ends up happening. NFL possibly playing the Super Bowl in London, may be happening in the 2030s. But guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on X. Link to that's always in the description.